Hi, welcome to All Things Possible. I'm super excited to have you here with me. I'm outside, there's some wind blowing. Hopefully it's not too much. But I want to tell you a new topic today about why face your fears. I know that I have talked about fears before and I have a couple of quotes that I use all the time, but I want to talk to you about why face those fears. But before we jump into that content, I want to invite you to join me on the website, allthingspossible.biz, or again at krisbarney.com. But join our community. We love to have you be part of All Things Possible and be part of the community that we have here, and to receive those. Every week we put out a blog and a video and give you content and ideas, tools and tips and things for you to benefit from and to improve your life. So join with our community if you haven't already. So let's get started on this today. I wanted to just do this short and sweet, but 3 benefits to facing your fears. Now there's all kinds of benefits. We're going to talk about 3 of those today and how I see that, because so much of the time we don't really see the wisdom in facing our fears, right? Because fear was put in place as a protection. Our initial being afraid of something is supposed to be a protection, like I saw a bear, or this is going to be, the burner is hot, right? And so that fear is to protect us from harm. Yet we get in a space where we get afraid and we let that fear come into play. And that's where fear can stop you or propel you. The choice is yours, right? And I've done a lot of things in my life to push past fears. I recently went skydiving, and if that's the video you watched about pushing past your fears, up to that point, that was probably the biggest one that I had done. I've done zip lining, I've done parasailing, I've done a lot of different things, even I'll think of the word in a minute, but we do things to push past those fears to feel that accomplishment, right? So the 3 main benefits I want to talk to you about is, first, it helps build courageous confidence. When you push past that fear, it builds that confidence inside of you that helps you to project it forward. So building courageous confidence is one of the first benefits. The second benefit is to create that accomplishment mentality. So all of us have this need to have accomplishment mentality. And when we can stay in accomplishment mentality, we are much more successful. When we push past a fear, when we push past what is stopping us, that fear of moving forward, that fear of the next step, that fear of being outside of the box, right? When we push past that fear and we take that next step, it gives us that accomplishment mentality, like that we can conquer anything, right? Which is our third one, which is conquering our limitations. So all of us have fear around different things. Some people are afraid of spiders. Some people are afraid of the dark. Some people are afraid of jumping out of an airplane, right? And most of the world is afraid of public speaking. Most of the world is afraid of death. So there's several things that are out there that all of us feel. But what comes down to conquering those limitations are what you feel. When you're trying to follow your heart and yet something stops you, something comes in the way, those are the things that we want to push through. When we have those fears, when I was in middle school, we had an activity with the cast of the play. We all went on this activity, and when that activity ended, we were back at the middle school and we had called our parents. Now my twin brother had walked a group of girls home because they were afraid. And when that ended, there weren't cell phones, there weren't these things. I tried on the phone to call my mother. She never hadn't picked us up. And I kept trying to call her, and I kept getting a busy signal. Now, most of you have a cell phone and you have no idea what that is, but that is when in the phone it goes beep, 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 and you can't get through. Well, the leaders left. That would never happen now, but back then it was like, yeah, everybody, and I'm like, my mom's coming, my brother will come back, it's all fine. It wasn't. I got attacked that night. And although this isn't about that, the details of that was that it was very scary and it made me afraid of the dark. So after that night, I had a fear because of an experience that I had had, right? And for all of you, you have fears and limitations around what you have experienced and what has happened to you. Also, what we tell ourselves. So much of the time, our fear comes from those things that we tell ourselves, and we let it stop us from moving forward. And that can be a lot of different things. What happens is it's our perception. It's our perception of how things are and what might happen. You've probably seen a video about awfulizing. We start awfulizing and talking about just how bad it could be, and we get ourselves convinced that it's worse than it could be. And I want to tell you a couple little stories about this, and I'll tell you the first one, which was just this week. So I'm preparing to go for a speaking trip, and I would be flying in, flying alone, renting a car, and returning the car and going to a different airport, which doesn't sound like a big deal when you're a speaker and that's something that you do. But most of the time, my husband travels with me. Every time that we've gone on vacation, every time we go anywhere, he always is the one that rents the car and not me. And when I go by myself, most of the time it's an Uber or a provided ride that they have pick me up or a Lyft. I haven't had to worry about any of this. As I'm preparing for this, last week, we find out that there's a hurricane. Hurricane Dorian has hit back east, right where I'm headed. And at the time, it was headed straight for where I would be. And it wasn't moving as fast as they had predicted. So I started on Friday trying to change all of my plans. And I couldn't. They would not allow me to change my flights. It was going to cost me more than just going to this trip that I needed to take. And I finally said, okay, I'm just going to have to do this. Well, I want to tell you, I awfulized it. I was flying into a hurricane. I don't deal with hurricanes out here. Wildfires, that's another story that I'll tell you in a minute. But a hurricane, I was like, why would I ever fly into a hurricane? I was going into airports that were having 1 to 6 hours of delays in all of the flights landing. This looked like a disaster to me, and it was very scary. I was starting to get really worked up about this. And as I looked at this, I was flying into one state, driving across to the other state, attending this 2-day conference, and having to fly back because I had an engagement that I had to be to the next morning. So I was taking a late flight out of JFK. So my biggest fear came not from the hurricane, not from the storms, not even from being on the stage being critiqued by an expert, right? It came from, I have to drive in New York. I have to drive from here to there, 80 miles in New York traffic during rush hour and bad weather. I can't even tell you, it was more scary to me. The fear just kept growing and growing. It was beyond the fear of jumping out of a plane. I just was in such shock that I was even doing this. And the more I talked to people, the worse it got. I got all these horror stories of traffic in New York and driving in New York during rush hour and the delays, and I'm gonna have to leave earlier, and it just kept building. People were telling me all of this negative, right, that was gonna be bigger. Like, why are you doing this? I would cancel right now. I mean, from assistants to accountability partners, everyone was telling me you're crazy. But I still got to go. I flew out Sunday morning at 6 in the morning and flew into the airport. I got there, I was on several freeway systems to get where I was going, and things were running really pretty smoothly. That part of travel I was okay with. A little nervous, but I was okay with it. The biggest thing came after a couple of days of fear, being on stages with experts judging, right? And telling you what to work on, which was amazing, but still nerve-wracking. But here I was to drive back. The hurricane had moved and it was no longer a problem. The weather was improving, but here was my drive back into New York during rush hour with so many different limitations. And it was just amazing to me to see how many things that I had awfulized in my mind and had allowed to become an issue for me. When I drove it, yes, it was rush hour. Yes, it was bumper to bumper. Yes, it got really intense. And there was even a point where there was a fender bender and a fist fight in the middle of the road. I was going over these bridges and had all these tolls, all these things I wasn't used to. But pushing past that and actually accomplishing what I set my mind to was so empowering. It built that courageous confidence. It built that confidence to where now it's not as big a deal. Like, hey, send me away. Like, let's go. I will fly in. I'm good. And it wasn't that I don't fly and I don't do that for other conferences. It's just I had always heard how difficult it was in New York, right? And it wasn't. I was just fine. Once I pushed past that, I had the accomplishment mentality that it was like, hey, I can handle this. I got this. No big deal. When we can push past those fears, because fear will stop you or propel you, the choice is yours. And when you can do that and you can really push through, you can do anything. If you allow fear to change what you're doing, to even stop you from doing it, I want you to take a look at that. I live in the mountains, and we've had a couple of wildfires that got really close to our home. And I was at a conference. My husband had just gotten done speaking, and we were selling his book, so we had this big, long line of people. I was 4 hours away from my home, and I got several pictures and several texts, but I got a lot of notifications that it was on fire. And the pictures that I saw were a hill and smoke. It looked like my own home was on fire. And I just told my husband, I need to go handle this. You keep doing what you're doing. You just got done speaking. And he kept doing it. A lot of people at that conference started to hear there was a big fire in my town. And it was within a half a mile of my house. But the pictures looked like it was my house. There were a lot of people that left that conference. What they don't realize is that a 4-hour drive, if their house was close to being on fire, it would be burnt. And they couldn't get in anyway. They'd shut down the streets and wouldn't let people in. Now, I knew that because I'd experienced a wildfire in my canyon and I knew what to expect. So that wasn't as scary for me. It wasn't as scary for my husband. Now we have some experience and we know how to handle that. The same as now I know how to drive in New York, right? That doesn't say it's not going to make me nervous when I go again, but I have more courage. I have more confidence. I have accomplishment mentality because I know I can do it. What do you know you can do? What do you know that you could do and have that mentality, have that accomplishment mentality that will stick with you and empower you to continue to move forward. Thanks for being with me. I am so excited that you're here, and I hope that you will look at your own experience and what you can do differently to empower yourself to move forward. Again, if you haven't joined our community, come to allthingspossible.biz. Join the community and be a part of what we have going on and create all things possible in your life. Thank you. Bye-bye.